Since you have all come here, thanks for that. My name is Tom Henriksson, partner at OpenOcean. And with me I have the legendary Monty Widenius, founder of MySQL and our developer and community guru. So today we will talk about the only thing we think we know something about, which is how to build software companies which employ a large user base or community business model. So since you're here, we'll still take a couple of quick minutes to say who we are, and then we'll go into 6 keys. They are not necessarily the only keys, and rarely does a company have all those keys anyways, but they are 6 of the important things we find in a user-based model that can really make that company find an advantage and a fast way to scale in the market efficiently. And then hopefully we'll have some good Q&A. So OpenOcean Capital, we invest in software startups in Europe that have a large user base. The background is that all partners had a role in or around MySQL. Monty still has, I guess, I don't know what, 40–50% of the core code of MySQL to his name. I was the lead investor in the A round. Then we have Ralph, who was the angel who helped Monty figure out how to make a business out of something that has millions of users but not so much revenue yet. And our 4th partner, Patrick, was on the management team of MySQL. And because of this joint history around it, we only invest in similar companies, whatever that means. Today we have a 45 million euro fund, so typically we do A-round investments. It's a European company developing software that already has lots of users. Hopefully also has an idea how to make money on the users, but actually doesn't have to do it if it has a strong and large enough user base slash community. We have 12 investments in the portfolio today and look to do 6 to 9 more over the next 2.5 years with this fund. There we are, Monty, myself, Ralph, Patrick. Now you have the names. Actually, I guess my story about what our roles were should have been during this slide, but anyways, there they are. Before we go into the keys, this is the graph somewhat simplified, yes, and maybe even secured a little bit from all the details, but how the company value grew vis-a-vis the user base and the popularity of the product. And from that experience and many others that we see, it's quite clear that when you have a user base that is truly growing and you get that, let's say, category leadership opportunity or position, you'll get a clear multiplier on the valuation of your company vis-a-vis other, let's say, financial metrics. Obviously, if you look at that point there, where the red, i.e. the company valuation really started going up, was when the company had tested and implemented and learned how to actually make money on that user base. And that was quite a journey, and we'll come back to that. But so that's our thesis. User-based growth will drive value creation.
Actually, one thing involved in things because we actually had a 50 million evaluation during the bubble here. So actually, for us, the valuation should be we and then go up. But that's usually what happens during bubbles. And personally, I believe that we are just now in a bubble.
I don't want to agree with that, but you know what? Although I've known Monty for a long time, that part I didn't know because I only got in as an investor here. So he would have been crazy if he had asked for 50 million when we invested.
That's what the valuation that I had back then.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes. But over to the 6 keys, and I'll let Monty start.
So we've taken some of the companies we are invested in and making some assessment about those. So Web of Trust was one of the early companies we invested in. And this is kind of interesting because it had millions of users. Now it has it's 40 million or?
Well, 100 million downloads and 20 million monthly actives, about 45 million websites rated.
Yeah, so when we come into them, they didn't have any ideas how to make money of the users, and it's kind of, because it's a platform that allows you to easily tell others that if there's something wrong with the website, and in other words, there's a virus, or if the website owner is not honest. So this is something that you can't do with normal tools. So this one of the early crowdsourcing of information about if this place is secure. So, but in the beginning, we were trying to find a way to see that can we monetize the users. And with many of the platforms, where you have lots of users, it's very hard to do that. That's basically the same problem that Twitter has. And you can't do announcement. You just use advertisement on everything. But with what we did find pretty early on, like Twitter has found that the value of the data is very, very valuable. And we have had big search engines who have paid for us to getting access to the information to know that these sites are not secure, and they are using that to promote advertisement. So if somebody's a site who has a bad reputation trying to buy advertisement, the advertisement will not be shown because the users of those sites will not appreciate going to places where they can get basically robbed.
But I guess, yeah.
So that in this case, the users is driving the database, and the database is where the value is. I still believe that you can also get other benefits of the users, but that still has to be tried with this company. Something else to add?
No.
And so then there are other companies who are using the users to basically distribute the product and do add-ons around it, while the company basically handles the core. So both Central and Rapid have full control of the base code. They are developing it, giving it out to the community, who are then adding stuff around it. This was basically also how MySQL was created. I employed all the core engineers. We hold full control of the server, and that was not by design. It just when you have a very complex product, it's very hard to get the community to be part of it. But with any product, you have lots of things on the outside. So with MySQL, there's a connectors to almost any language, to any applications. I wrote 3 myself, and the community wrote the rest. So that's kind of, you get development done in things that you could never do yourself. And that's the only way you can compete with the big guys. So that's where the value for the users are in these kind of companies. Something to add?
No. Why would I? I'll take a nap.
Yeah. So then commerce guys. There's in the Drupal community, there's a lot of different solutions for different things. And what they are doing is they're basically collecting the best of the best, adding hooks, and basically giving out those for others to buy and use. So you can see this as the same way as Red Hat is doing. Red Hat is not an open source development company. I think that's in the open source world is the biggest misunderstanding of all. They are not making money on open source. They are making money of doing a distribution and creating a name, and the name has the value, not as much as the software.
Maybe to that one I would add, I mean, commerce, so there's the, I don't know, 150 modules for Drupal commerce out there for free. Drupal and Drupal commerce is super flexible and modular and great and scalable. It really is, but that makes it hard to implement. So the first product of Commerce Guys is called Kickstart. It's a free distribution that just helps you easily implement your first Drupal commerce site. Then the second product that they have is a marketplace with some of those other modules, certified, verified, this and that, but a bunch of commercial modules like payment gateways and marketing tools and whatever that you may want to have when you have that Drupal commerce site up and running. And now they're developing hosting, development tools, etc. around it as their future upcoming products. So really, what they are actually selling is very, very different from that core Drupal commerce thing.
But still, early days.
Still based on that.
Yeah. So with Truecaller, we have a little bit like what, but in bigger degree. But Truecaller is trying to be the first global phone book. So it's an app you install in your phone, and when somebody calls you, it will tell you who called you. And they are doing this by crowdsourcing information in your phones and others who are using the app.
And I'll throw in one word, because I'm like Donald Trump. Over 1 billion phone numbers in their cloud phone directory today. Yeah. A sixth of the world's populations / numbers, whichever is larger, already there.
Yeah. So in this case, they give out something that is free to use, but still they get the phone information, and now they are using this one to generate revenue by adding new possibilities like name search, but not name search for everybody, but basically just your friends and your friends. So if your friend knows somebody and you don't have his phone number, you can get it through Truecaller in addition. And this is one of the companies we believe will be one of the big winners in our portfolio. And the interesting thing is that the way that the crowdsourcing work is that if they get a hook into a company or a country, they basically only need 5% of the users to use them to get access to 90% of all the phone numbers in the country. And they have already proven that in India and in some other places.
And so they are actually our only company in the portfolio today that has a model where when you go into a market, we know how many numbers we need to get, or what share of the population to get that many numbers, to get a certain rating in the App Store, to go viral. And their virality factor is really high. So they can in advance say that this is how much it's going to cost me to go into Indonesia and take over Indonesia. Once you have the database of the numbers in Indonesia, it keeps updating, it keeps getting bigger and better all the time, so it's really hard for anyone else to catch up. When we invested, they had 4 million users a little bit over a year ago. Now they have 34 million users, so it's growing very rapidly.
And I like the fact that you can do a product with a user base and open source and things related to that, and you can give out something that is free, is good. Most people can use it for free, but and then you have a way to monetize it that doesn't affect most of the users. You have very few who will pay, but enough that you can make a really, really good profit. That was the same thing with MySQL. One thing that is hard to do is actually to get the user base started. With MySQL, back in the old days, it was easy. We were the first truly free usable database for the web, so the adoption was really, really rapidly. We grow in 5 years to 10 million users, and now there are about 50 million installations of MySQL. Now I'm trying to do the same thing with MariaDB, because MySQL was bought by a company who, by logic and by not giving any promises, they don't have any intention to keep MySQL alive. So I forked MySQL, made a copy of it, and to ensure that it will always be free. So the challenge for me was that competing with something I had created myself. And it basically took me 4 years to come up to a place where we today can say that within 2-3 years MySQL will be replaced by MariaDB. But it was...
And it's already being so at the Googles and Facebooks and in the Linux distributions. I'll pitch a little bit, because it is. He's a modest guy.
Yeah, but basically the thing was that what happened was that we needed to get into distributions because if everybody downloads a database and always get MySQL, it's impossible to replace it. So it took us 4 years to convince the other leaders in the ecosystem that we are the only one who are free enough, and we will become free. So now all the Linux distributions except Debian and Ubuntu, but they already have started to adopt MariaDB. They have taken MariaDB instead of MySQL, and that means that over time MySQL will disappear. But the hard times was to convince the community when they were already a viable alternative. You just need to have a better story. And the main point that we did was that we created a foundation to prove that we have good intentions, that owns enough for the trademark to guarantee that what happened to MySQL can never happen again. And that was kind of the turning point. But it took us basically 3 years to understand that we needed a foundation. Without that, we could never have done that. So sometimes it has to be an external factor that you create yourself that basically changes everything. For MariaDB, the foundation.
Question, because MariaDB is obviously slightly higher performing than MySQL as well with your history. So you think that really matters or not in achieving the adoption and distribution?
It helps because lots of the big sites like Google was going with us because of the performance, but it was even more important that it was free. Especially distribution, they don't care about the performance. They only care about freedom. So we
and free forever, right?
Yeah, free forever. Basically free in the sense that anybody can be part of the developing community, so it doesn't disappear.
All right. So over to from creating products and maybe getting some virality in the adoption, over to sales. Three comments on that. And here we will go back to the MySQL case again. There's many cases where what I'm going to say is being done today, but why we go back to MySQL is because it was really, if not the first, definitely one of the first that started doing true lead gen, nurturing, scoring, etc. In more or less a purely digital way. So from that large community, starting to learning where the leads came from, starting to interacting with users of MySQL depending on what they did in different ways, as in somebody downloaded a white paper, that means something. So then you do an action after it that hopefully will drive them forward in the funnel. Today, you can use the Marketos and HubSpots with some scripting and adaptations and so on to do the same. At MySQL, this was built bottom up, Excel and other tools. And it links very, very much to the next point, but obviously the whole idea here is to have a system that is scalable, that automatically takes the customer or lead, whatever it is, as far as possible towards becoming a larger customer or a more qualified lead, and to have as little as possible of human interaction in that process to be very effective. It's easy to say it here. At MySQL, to build that, it took years, especially to build and perfect it. And I'm sure they're still perfecting it. And that's the same with your companies. It's a learning process, but it takes a surprisingly long time to get there.
But you actually forgot the background. Background was with MySQL was that we spent 5 years only creating a user base of several millions of users. And we did know that we can monetize it, but we were not in a hurry because we were just focused on the technology. And we did enough money that we actually could hire more and more people and grow organically. So it was only in 2001 that we thought that, no, we have a problem that every time we answer the phone, there's an investor. We need to do something just to get rid of them. And the easiest way to do that is actually take an investor. But the whole lead generation started basically after we took investors and actually hired marketing people and everything else, because we didn't have any of those. But what the salespeople loved with MySQL was that because we have been around 5 years, everybody was using us. They could call any company and just say, we are from MySQL, and other companies said that, oh, we are using your product, we would love to meet you. So it was really, really easy sale process in the beginning. And then we took a lot of time to make it total automatic. So our salespeople had some close to 100 in the end. Basically, they got a list of customers to call each month, and they did know that everybody of these will answer the phone because they are using it. And we could actually say how much they were using it just by looking at downloads.
Yeah, and there were literally cases. I mean, one was when Sun bought MySQL, and now, because it's a public event, I won't say names, but the CEO, Sun, came back with a more than $1 million order because he knew what MySQL instances were the company was using, which the CIO of the company did not know. So he had a fairly convincing case to sell some support and additional database management modules, et cetera, on top of it. CEO was shocked by them having, I think it was 25 or 2,600 instances, which he didn't know about. That's the way you want to do sales, which comes to the next one is, getting leads and customer potential processed automatically and effectively as far as you can. But then it's probably a mix of different models. Some convert online, some may require you to call them. We see companies that actually make $50,000 deals just on the phone. And some of them, or SkySQL being the best example of those portfolio companies, where you go in and you know a lot about the customer. Maybe they've already asked you to do special things for them. They're maybe buying your services. They are doing this and that. So you actually have a very high likelihood of winning business when you go in there. But the point is, it's hard to find a perfect model. The model usually has a mix of different components. These companies, they're all doing parts of what I just said. None of them are doing it at very, very high scale already. Yet, although SkySQL, for instance, is doing quite a large business. And here I have a theory, and that is that even when you have pure online software as a service products that sell itself, somehow you get demand generated, you get people to go there, to test the product, to buy the product, to get the support, everything online. Like, I'm sure you know Atlassian, who has Jira and Confluence and other development tools. The goal at Atlassian is that if anybody calls them, or if they have to meet somebody, they have a problem. They have a problem in their sales process, in their product design. It's designed to have no physical interaction with people. I actually don't believe that's true, but that's Atlassian is perhaps the most advanced of all, let's say, start-up-ish software companies we know of in totally automating their sales and never sending anybody out there. But when you come to the $1 million check like this big bank's CIO signed, actually, even in those cases, I don't know the fact of Atlassian, but most of the ones that we see, they want a special instance, they want a special customer support team, they want something special. In addition to, they want you to be humble to them and smile at them and do whatever they want. So I don't believe in the pure online sales model in enterprise business. But some like Atlassian are probably close.
But you also had the companies like Facebook, where if you want to have a contract with them, you don't give them a contract, they give you a contract.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, and that's, at the same time, Facebook has lots of people talking with agencies and advertisers and so on. So you can do it automatically. Yeah. So anyways, there is perhaps no perfect sales model, but there are better ones and less efficient ones. Last point, this we don't see enough of in our own portfolio. When you have a user base, you have lots of interactions with the user base. Some have it on a monthly basis, some have it on a daily or a minute basis. You get a lot of data, right? Too few of our companies, and definitely too few of the companies we meet, use that data for, now let's bring it back to the how to go global, how to grow big. As in, some use it on the product side, A/B testing features and what have you, maybe even with different customer groups and so on. Very few actually drill down and look at how differently markets work for that same product, for instance. Not to mention mixing in different customer segments and so on. Well, pricing, a classical question. You who has a user-based model, you have something free, maybe a free version or a free trial or something. Is that better than actually not having something free? Or should you limit that free more so that people don't artificially stay at 4 users so they don't have to upgrade to the 5-user plus version? Stuff like that. Actually a pricing decision. You could use the user-based data to find that out. Some companies do, but very rarely do we see that. This could be a long decision, but I'm saying if you have a user base, you have a lot of data, use it. And promotion, our latest investment in RapidMiner, which is actually the world's most popular predictive analytics and data mining tool from Germany, now actually flipped to be a US corporation, can help you do that. So why don't you go and try out RapidMiner if you haven't done so already? But that's really our 6 keys. Some of them may be useful for you, hopefully many. But actually, anything to add?
Actually, I have a 7th key, the one mistake that we did.
Okay.
So
bonus one.
Yeah. So usually, when we're investing in OpenOcean, we are investing into companies who have big user growth. One of the early investments when we started to do this, that was actually before Tom, so it's not his fault. We shouldn't name.
Not everything can be my fault.
Yeah. So basically, it was a gaming company, basically really good user growth, and we invested in that little bit too early because they basically had a convincing case why they needed money. And what we didn't notice until a couple of months later was that all the new adoptions was basically new users. The old users dropped out. So there were no stickiness in the product. And they never could create the stickiness. So if you're looking at going to investors and having a pitch about your product to the user base, or your investors and want to see that is this company is really valuable, look at the stickiness. How many from the beginning are still using the product? How long will we continue? And that's actually one problem that Twitter has today. They have a really hard time to getting certain groups of users to use it for more than a trial. And we will, during the next few years, we will see what kind of stickiness Twitter has. But for new companies, really critical to see that the stickiness are there and that they can recreate themselves to create more and more stickiness. There just announcement about World of Warcraft. We're coming out with a new extra kind of not part, and they're just doing that because the old stickiness of World of Warcraft is fading, and they kind of need to adopt to them. But for a growing company, that's probably the most important thing to look at when it comes to user base. Since
you brought it up, one mistake, let's bring up another one, which is not really a mistake, but will show you how difficult the life of an investor is. So I joined OpenOcean in around the 22nd of April 2011 from Nokia. Okay, I'd sold my old venture firm and whatever that invested in MySQL, and then had a great time at Nokia, and then re-met with these guys and joined them. On that very Monday, you can look it in the calendar, I think it's 21st or 22nd of April 2011, I get a deal on my table from Nenad from DN Capital, who I've known from a long time, and he said that he's competing for a deal in Finland and he'd like to have us. Great that you're back in VC. He'd love to have us as an investor, co-investor with him so he can win the deal. Well, in our new fund, maybe due to this mistake, and there was another gaming company that didn't do so well either, right? We told our investors we don't do games anymore. So by Wednesday, I said no thank you to this one. It had a community aspect. It had a lot of the things we've talked about today, but it was a game. It was Supercell. So I said no to Supercell. Okay? Damn! To be really frank, we would never have won the deal with DN because the amount of money at the valuation they took in from Excel for more or less a concept. Great team, no doubt, but they weren't that far along yet. We would never have had the balls or the resources to go to that deal. But you know, you have to say no to someone, and sometimes it's the Supercell. Anyways, comments, questions? We have 5 minutes, it looks like, from your watch.
Do you think they speak English?
Probably not. Think they're awake after all of this?
Yeah.
So I have a question. It looks like you're pretty focused on consumer internet and building your large user bases that then have the network effect. Software as a service in there as well, but the B2B sales pipelines classically take longer and have complications. And what's your comfort zone really with B2B solutions versus consumer internet, and how do you really view the two different archetypes?
I'll jump at it right away. I mean, we actually don't do that much consumer user bases. Truecaller and Web of Trust are almost exceptions. We'd like to do more of them because they're exciting and they can become quickly very, very big. But coming from the MySQL background, it's about user bases and communities, but it typically in a B2B enterprise software context. So that's the heart of it. Absolutely. I mean, looking at our portfolio, RapidMiner, Commerce Guys, SkySQL, Sential, Nosto, all B2B companies, pure B2B companies. SaaS, freemium, what have you, have similar traits to MySQL, slightly adapted models.
What's your opinion about social coding projects such as GitHub or some other companies that are arising in the market?
The problem with them is that we actually have a couple of ones who have, similar to GitHub, who has asked us for investment. The problem is that it's very hard to see who is winning this when most of the tools are totally free. And in MariaDB, we are using Launchpad, which is a competitor. Everything is free. All tools or the developers that they ever want is free. They don't need anything. It's really hard to sell to a market, especially developers who knows everything and can get everything free, and is the best of the best already. So I have a hard time see that how you can do that. We did see a company who was doing something similar to GitHub, and they kind of noticed that they can also store not only code but documents in the database. And apparently lots of companies started to use their tools for something totally different. And for that, there's no really big market. So in that case, it actually can work. But you have to really to see who is the one who's going to pay. If you have nobody who wants to pay, and developers is probably the hardest people to get to pay from.
And on that, I mean, one of the things we look at when we evaluate a company is if it's something that has a free version and a commercial version, or versions, is the difference in these two. If they're very close, it's probably not going to be very hot. But if they can find that large difference in the commercial version value, however they build that value, then it could be interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that I have been doing the last year is that finding new business model around open source. And actually, there was one company who just switched to the business model that I have been proposing, Business Source, which is a way to commercialize open source in a better way than we did with MySQL, because with MySQL, it only works for embedded software. The new one works for any software. And we are trying to get people in the open source world to accept this new license. And that I have been hold some 15 speaks just this year about this. And the adoption starts to increase. There were just, was it yesterday, a couple hundred tweets about this. So it's getting adoption.
Don't keep them too excited. Tell them what Business Source is. So
Business Source is it's a time-delayed license. So it means that everything you do is free. People can access it. The source code is open. You can use it for most things, but your license says that it's free to use, distribute, etc. Except in this case, if you use it under these circumstances, you have to pay. So you basically target the license that your business group could be big web companies or companies who have more than 100 employees. They have to pay for your software. But the trick is here why it's kind of open source, that you say after 5 years or 3 years, depending on your business model, this software becomes open source. So you have all the benefits of open source from the developers and users' point of view, and you have no vendor lock-in, because if you would try to do something and change business or something else and stop developing, somebody else can take over. They still have to pay licenses for a few years, but then they are free. So with open source, the biggest problems that open source is there to solve from most practical point of view is that no vendor locking, and you can actually do changes that you need for your business. Business source solves both of those.
And before the lady from NOAH closes us down, Hiram, actually I was thinking about your question. You know, we showed, yes, we talked about billions and we had millions or tens of millions of users or 100 million and so on. What are we looking for when we talk about large user bases? It depends on what business you are in. If you're Truecaller, a mobile app that maybe can make $1 or $5 per user, you need to have millions for us to be interested. But if you're enterprise software as a service with a freemium model, test to something model that gets 10,000 or more per customer, you don't need to have that many. So it's really the relationship there. How many can you have and what could they be valued at? Time for a final questions? If anyone has, quick question. If not, then we thank you for joining us and look forward to maybe investing in some of your companies.